my boss, he's different.
You can't get him out of your head.
No.
I need your assistance.
I'm coming, Master! Oh, you feel like he could destroy you with the snap of his fingers.
Wouldn't even need to snap.
Okay.
Uh-huh, that sounds familiar.
Yeah, what?
Renfield, bring in innocent victims. I want a handful of nuns, a busload of cheerleaders.
And I just want a normal life again. But this modern world is a dangerous place.
Aloha. This is Trinidad, the Island Man, your Island Man, coming to you live once again from beautiful Hawaii here on the island of Oahu, bringing you, yes you, the best movie reviews on the entire island of Oahu. And yes, this is Trinidad, the Island Man, your Island Man. And who? I've done a double feature this Friday, opening weekend for the new movies. And I finally saw Renfield. Some other people that I know had already seen it, and they enjoyed it. And, well, remember our rating scale. Shock a thumbs up, it's good to see, I recommend it. Shock a thumbs down, it's junk, I don't recommend it. And for Renfield, starring Nicholas Hoult, Awkwafina, Nicolas Cage, it is overall a shock a thumbs up. Now, all the way from the trailers, I could have told that this was going to be a more tongue-in-cheek kind of vampire Dracula, apprentice slash familiar kind of movie than any other Dracula movies that we've seen. But I wasn't sure what I could relate it to. I know a lot of people were fascinated by the fact that, Nicolas Cage was jumping back into a vampire role since way back in the, 80s? Late 80s? I want to say late 80s, honestly, with Vampire's Kiss, I guess, is what he was in before. And honestly, that was a staple on HBO back when I was a teenager. And, I know a lot of people swear by that movie. Sorry, Tina. I really can't remember it. I know it was him, Nicolas Cage, just thinking he was a vampire through most of the movie, thinking he was turned into a vampire. And, I think maybe at the end it was kind of, was he a vampire? Wasn't he a vampire? That's like, well, I don't know. I can't remember, and I didn't go ahead and see it before this movie or go back to rewatch it. But talking about Renfield, let me just say, having seen Nicolas Cage in The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, in Renfield, Nicolas Cage as Dracula goes full Cage. You want the full Cage, you get the full Cage in Renfield. He is definitely Dracula, and he's loving and chewing up the scenery along with several other of the characters throughout this movie. Let me just say that I am not a big fan of Nicholas Hoult. The man played Beast in X-Men First Class, the following X-Men movies, Days of Future Past, blah, blah. I don't care for Nicholas Hoult and his Beast. I'll take, who's that guy? Leslie Grammer, over over Nicholas Hoult as Beast any day. But yeah, I gotta say, this is the first movie that I've actually liked him in. He was very relatable, being the familiar of Dracula, you know, and it is kind of, you know, it goes and explains how he became, you know, a servant of Dracula, how he was kind of convinced and tricked, and it uses today's kind of, let me see, what was that phrase from the 90s? Psychobabble, you know, or as we would like to say nowadays, maybe, you know, the psychology of TV psychology kind of therapy, and dependency, clicks, and you know, basically codependency, behavior, as far as why Nicholas Holt's Renfield follows Dracula, man of very low self-esteem, through hundreds of years, being the servant of Dracula, being basically looked down upon, and you know, and Dracula taking advantage of him, and not realizing that until he comes into today's terminologies and lingos, and finds himself seeking therapy to try to get out of this, as you see in the trailers, toxic relationship that he has with, you know, with Dracula, Nicolas Cage. But it is thanks to Awkwafina and him, Nicholas Holt, Renfield, finding her and seeing her stand up to people like, you know, Dracula, or people you know, more powerful people in her life that are abusing her, that he finds strength to rise up against Dracula himself, along with the help of his therapy group. That's about all I can say for this movie. It is way over the top, as limbs are torn off. There are bloody fight scenes. You see some of that in the trailer, so it's not really a spoiler. All while he's kind of flirting with Awkwafina here and there, as they kind of save each other, with much hilarity. And so it is a comedy. It is an action comedy, very light on the horror. Nicolas Cage does his best to try to bring back some of the horror elements. I do like the fact, you know, someone had mentioned in their review, or mentioned when they were talking about the movie, that they had seen it Wednesday early. You know who you are, saying that, you know, that Nicolas Cage really channels Bela Lugosi. It's like, yeah, he channels Bela Lugosi, all right, because they freaking deep-faked Nicolas Cage and Nicholas Holt onto the old Dracula movie with Bela Lugosi when they're talking about his past and showing some of those scenes. It's like freaking, it's like, that's Bela Lugosi. It's like, I really don't think they reshot any of that stuff. They just deep faked their faces on, you know, the other actors, you know, Bela Lugosi, you know, with Nicolas Cage's head on it for Dracula, in these iconic, you know, old Universal movie, you know, sets and scenes from the classic Dracula, from the 40s and 50s. Gosh, so yeah, he does kind of channel Bela Lugosi there, but he goes way over the top. Somewhere between, I guess, Vampire's Kiss, and I would really relate this more to what was that 90s movie, Innocent Blood, you know, which was a quirky vampire movie with Robert Legato, I think Robert Legato, as a crime boss who becomes a vampire because he's bit by a female vampire, and she's unable to kill him before he fully gets power. It's kind of reminiscent of that. But this one is much, much better, goes much, much more into the gore and much funnier. But there are definite elements that you can draw from Innocent Blood to this movie, especially with Dracula. He teams up with this crime family as he begins to take over the world, and Nicolas Cage finally freeing himself from Dracula's spell, basically. Nicholas Hoult, Renfield, decides to stop him and stand up against him fully with the help of Awkwafina as the police commissioner, or as the police officer trying to take down this criminal drug lord, very much like what was portrayed in Innocent Blood, that kind of, mafia family at the time. So yes, there are definite elements there. That's basically what I would compare it to. But again, much, much more over the top. Both in comedy, you've got Awkwafina, you've got Nicolas Cage. Even Nicholas Hoult has some good, funny lines in it, which makes him very likable for this movie. But I'm laughing all the way with Nicolas Cage and Awkwafina. They do share a couple of scenes together, and that's, just pure magic for me, not being a Nicholas Hoult guy, but more of a Nick Cage and Awkwafina guy. And, it would be remiss of me to say, not mention that it's like, as far as a action movie goes, this is kind of, and they mention it in the trailer even, that, he's a superhero in a way, Renfield is. And he saves Awkwafina, the police officer, using his evil powers from Dracula. So, and it's kind of nice to see the Marvel group getting together. Nicholas Hoult did play Beast for the Fox X-Men Marvel, family, and Awkwafina, who was in Shang-Chi, playing, not really someone with powers, but her archery skills were spot on, and she definitely did bring the funny to Shang-Chi as well. So there's a lot to like in this movie. So again, a shock thumbs up for Renfield. Lots of violence, lots of language, but it is funny. So not for small children, but if you've got a teenager and you want to have a good laugh with them at the theater, definitely take them to go see this movie. This is a fun and funny date night for you and your hubby, you and your girl, talking about romance and beating up bad guys. What more could you want for an evening out at the movies? Plus all the Cage you can stand. Oh man, I don't know what more to say about this. It has a possibility for a sequel. I'll just leave it there, but it's a light possibility. Nothing definitely, jumping out. They say, oh, this could happen. They could return, blah, 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 who knows? If this is a box office hit, maybe, but things get pretty well wrapped up at the end of this movie to where if they can just go off into the sunset, Awkwafina and Nicholas Hoult, and maybe be Dracula free for the rest of their days. Who knows? Why Nicholas Hoult still continues to keep his powers, Renfield keeps his powers, despite, betraying Dracula and Dracula not taking his powers back from Renfield. Not quite sure. But it's best if you don't think about it too hard for this movie. But overall, lots of fun. And it's pretty fast moving. And if you've had an abusive relationship, are familiar with codependency, there will be elements of humor that you can laugh at and look at as well in this movie on a little bit of a more serious note. But ultimately it is done for tongue-in-cheek purposes. But there is some glimmer of truth to what is being told through this movie, through the guise of a vampire movie. So definitely much better than Morbius. Graphic-wise, this is a hard R, no doubt about it, for violence, blood, and language. Far more than the PG Morbius movie that we had gotten, from Sony earlier. So they're definitely on the right track. I wouldn't mind seeing a Morbius Renfield crossover in the future, but it's doubtful that will ever happen. But I wouldn't mind seeing Awkwafina and Nicolas Cage and Nicholas Hoult come back again for a Renfield Part 2 or whatever they want to do. I'd be willing to check it out. All right. So again, shock a thumbs up for Renfield. Check it out whenever, however you can at the theater. But definitely, if you're not going to see it at theater, check it out on streaming when it comes for video on demand or to any of the streaming services. Just keep an eye out for it, and you'll get a lot of laughs out of this movie. All right, mahalo and aloha.